No naval drama disturbs the imagination like the story of the brigantine Mary Celeste. She was found more than a century ago in the Atlantic Ocean without a single soul on board. The captain of the ship, Benjamin Briggs, his wife and daughter, as well as 6 crew members disappeared, turning into the heroes of the most mysterious sea stories. Many of us have heard about this ghost ship, but what really happened to the Mary Celeste brigantine remains an unsolved mystery. The story of this sinister tragedy began with a joyous event in the city of Halifax, Nova Scotia, on the Atlantic coast of Canada. In May 1861, a small group of people witnessed the launching of the very first sailing vessel built at the shipyard called the Amazon. But setbacks began to haunt the brigantine from the very first days. On the maiden voyage, the captain of the sailing ship Mary Celeste was struck down by a fatal illness. The next captain ran the Amazon brigantine aground, which turned out to be a fishing hole off the coast of the Maine. The sailing vessel had to be turned over to restore the bottom. After going out to sea, the sailboat collided with another ship, sending it to the bottom. For the next 5 years, the brigantine languished in obscurity, shuttling between the British Isles and the West Indies across the Mediterranean. Then the sailing ship Mary Celeste ran aground near Gate Watson Island, northern Scotland, where, after minor repairs, it was auctioned off as unseaworthy. All those who approached the brigantine were accompanied only by troubles and misfortunes. The transformation of the brigantine Mary Celeste into a ghost ship. The Amazon brigantine changed hands until it was thoroughly repaired in 1872. A second deck was added to the vessel and the cargo capacity was increased to 84 tons. In fact, the brigantine turned into a new ship. Now, under the American flag and a new name, the brigantine Mary Celeste was about to enter maritime history and become infamous for its mysterious fate. The first voyage of the practically rebuilt Mary Celeste began on November 7, 1872. Her new owner was Captain Benjamin Briggs, a 38-year-old sea wolf and a hereditary sailor from Massachusetts. He came from a strong religious family, a strict but respected captain. His wife Sarah and 2-year-old baby Sophie accompanied him on this voyage. Mrs. Briggs provided the tiny captain's cabin with everything necessary, even a sewing machine and a small melodeon so as not to get bored on the way. The team consisted of 7 American and German sailors who had vast experience and skill. The ship was carrying 1,700 bottles of alcoholic beverages to the port of Genoa, Italy. Like all excellent captains, Benjamin Briggs kept a ship's log, but the entries were brief and not informative. Then something happened on the morning of November the 25th, 1872, when the last entry in the journal was made. 9 days later, the brigantine Mary Celeste was found drifting 378 miles east of Santa Maria Island without a single soul on board. There were several witnesses in the world who could observe the Mary Celeste ghost ship. On the evening of December 4th, 1872, the brigantine Tina del Grazia passed the Atlantic Ocean north of the Azores Islands, heading for Gibraltar. The crew had been battling bad weather for several days, and the sea was still choppy. Captain David Minhouse spotted a sail on the horizon. The ship was sailing without distinctive lights, moving in a westerly direction, swaying noticeably. The sails of the brigantine were in disarray. Most of the stocks were rolled up, some of the stocks were raised, and some were blown off. Even without an obvious distress signal, the captain realized that the sailing ship was in trouble. He ordered them to come closer. The crew called out to the ghost ship several times, but there was no response. Finally, David Minhouse gave the order to lower the boat, and First Mate Oliver Devois, along with 2 crew members, set off in a boat to another ship. Having boarded, Devois looked around the gloomy deck. The brigantine was absolutely silent, only the ominous creaking of the gitts. An unusual encounter. The brigantine Mary Celeste was abandoned. Everything indicated that the crew had left the ship in a hurry. The telescope, sextant, and navigation charts were gone, but the raincoats and smoking pipes belonging to the sailors were neatly stacked below. The dishes were washed, and all the bunks were made except for the captain's. 2 covers leading to the hold were open, including the captain's porthole. The cargo, consisting of barrels, was in place and even in good condition. There was nothing to indicate the use of force. Benjamin Brix was an excellent sailor, but what forced him to leave his own sailing ship, risking the lives of his wife, child, and crew, and transfer to a small boat among the raging waves? What happened to the crew of the brigantine Mary Celeste? One can imagine what was going on in Otto Devois' head as he and his men rowed back to their sailing vessel, the Tina del Grazia. Given the condition of the brigantine Mary Celeste, it was decided to drive her into the Strait of Gibraltar. When the ghost ship was delivered to the designated location, the captain claimed the reward for the salvaged property. A hearing was scheduled by the court. The unusual circumstances of this case aroused the interest of the local prosecutor. He was convinced that the reason for the disappearance of the team was a crime. He followed the theory that the crew had taken possession of alcohol and killed the captain and his family while intoxicated. In the end, the court rejected this accusation and cleared the captain and his crew of suspicion. Despite this, he was paid only £1,700, which turned out to be less than half of the required reward for such a find. The court did not make any decision about the missing team, an unusual encounter. The brigantine Mary Celeste was abandoned. Everything indicated that the crew had left the ship in a hurry. The telescope, sextant, and navigation charts were gone, but the raincoats and smoking pipes belonging to the sailors were neatly stacked below. The dishes were washed and all the bunks were made, except for the captain's. 2 covers leading to the hold were open, including the captain's porthole. The cargo, consisting of barrels, was in place and even in good condition. There was nothing to indicate the use of force. Benjamin Brix was an excellent sailor, but what forced him to leave his own sailing ship, risking the lives of his wife, child, and crew, and transfer to a small boat among the raging waves? What happened to the crew of the brigantine Mary Celeste? The true fate of the cursed ship. Mary Celeste sailors are superstitious people. Therefore, until the end of their days, the sailing ship Mary Celeste bore the stigma of a cursed ship. Since then, it has not been easy for the owners of the brigantine to recruit a team. Over the next 12 years, the sailing ship Mary Celeste changed several owners, but most of the time the brigantine stood forgotten and slowly fell into disrepair. In the end, the ship turned into a floating wreck and met its demise in the most shameful way. At the end of 1884, an American consortium purchased the Mary Celeste brigantine at an incredibly low price and prepared it for shipment from Boston with a cargo of beer, butter, boots, and other various goods to one of the ports of Haiti. This was the last voyage of the sailboat. After filling the hold with goods, the Mary Celeste brigantine was insured by the leaders of the American consortium for the amount of $25,000 by 5 different insurance companies. When the sailing ship reached the island of Haiti, the weather was clear. There was a dead calm at sea. The captain ordered the brigantine Mary Celeste to be stranded on a reef. As soon as the ship ran aground, Captain Parker ordered the crew to cut down the masts. Then Parker got rid of everything that could be sold. It was obviously an insurance scam. The sinking of the sailing ship Mary Celeste was Captain Parker's pre-planned plan. The ship's investigators soon discovered that the cargo declaration was a fake. Beer bottles were filled with water and boxes of silver contained cheap dog collars. An order was immediately given and Parker was arrested. The captain and the shippers were charged with conspiracy, and Parker was charged with intentionally harming the ship, a crime for which the United States was sentenced to death. But the trial brought little satisfaction and even less justice. Soon the shippers admitted their guilt and reimbursed the debts, and the jury dropped the charges against the captain and he was released. But a few months later, the captain and the first mate died suddenly, and the charterers went bankrupt, as if the curse of the ghost ship Mary Celeste continued after her wooden relics rotted off the coast of Haiti, a sea story and the reality of a ghost ship. A few years after the mysterious discovery, the brigantine Mary Celeste accidentally became the ground for numerous theories of writers who offered their conjectures to the world, including the story of the writer Arthur Conan Doyle, who made the sailing ship famous. Some suggested a mutiny of piracy at sea, while others tended to mysticism. Perhaps the truth is more logical. Many historians have written that the answer is related to the cargo of the ship. The fumes of alcoholic beverages filled the hold, turning the ship into a floating bomb. Captain Brix panicked, so his family and crew boarded the lifeboat until the fumes dissipated. From that moment on, something went wrong. The cable connecting the boat and the ship broke off, and the brigantine sailed to meet her inglorious doom, leaving her crew and captain to be torn apart by the ocean. The wonderful story of the Flying Dutchman, Mary Celeste, is just a myth. This is the fate of a sailing ship, the wreckage of which was found near the Azores Islands. In 1872, without a single soul on board, everyone disappeared without a trace. The Department of Investigation offered various scenarios for what happened, but the truth is that the crew abandoned the ship themselves. Then it went away, leaving them alone. It's hard to believe, but a mysterious ghost ship, one of those that has become a legend, abandoned without a single soul on board, the Mary Celeste lies under millions of tons of clamshells on the Rocheleau Reef. The authenticity of the wreckage was proven by Canadian scientists in 2004, but the mystery of the disappearance of the entire crew during the ill-fated 1872 sea voyage will haunt us forever. This story has become one of those that haunt future generations, constantly reminding them of themselves.